And then it's about building out your profile so you look attractive to those people. Now, I call this getting dressed before you get busy, because nobody pays you to put on a suit and tie. Nobody pays you to wear the corporate polo shirt. But heck, if you look out of place, people judge that. So get dressed before you get busy.
Get ready to build, protect, and sell your expertise online with the Online Genius Podcast. You'll laugh. We hope you won't cry. But you'll always be informed and prepared so you can have the success you want. Here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink. And now I'm really excited for today's show because I expect that I'm going to be learning a lot today, because we're going to be talking about tools and things that you can use to actually build your presence online, but then also to sell and make money. Specifically, we're going to be talking about social selling and LinkedIn for your business. Now, I have to admit, I was a bit late to the LinkedIn party. I literally never used it before launching my own law firm about 4 years ago, except I think I joined just so I could find someone's email address. And I also have to admit, I've never really figured it out myself. I've tried a couple of times, but I've never gotten deep in it enough to really learn how to use it the best. And I thought that's probably true of a lot of entrepreneurs. And I thought that it's actually a subject that is something that we all should learn, especially for people who are trying to be thought leaders. So that's why I decided to do an episode on it. And I invited today's guest expert, Phil Gerby. Now, Phil is an award-winning speaker and trainer who works with organizations and salespeople to integrate social selling and technology into their business practices. He believes in the power of social selling and connection. With a unique selling style, part sales expert, part entertainer, Phil keeps his audiences awake and engaged while providing actionable steps to bring in more leads, more referrals, and more business. As a former VP of IT and director of social selling, he's been leading and training teams of all sizes for many years. If he's not speaking, learning, or making new connections, Phil writes. He's published 5 books. He's got over 2,500 articles, and he's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, USA Today, Inc., Financial Times, and the list goes on. And when he's not speaking or training or writing or doing anything professionally, you'll find him on one of the many beaches in Florida or enjoying a craft beer or playing pinball. Now, with that, welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, Phil.
Thanks so much, Bobby. It's great to be here, man.
Now, so I'm excited to talk social selling and LinkedIn, but before we do that, I've got to ask you a couple of personal questions. First, what is your favorite craft beer?
Oh, my favorite craft beer. Boy, that's so hard. My favorite craft brewery would probably be Cigar City Brewery down here in Tampa. And I mention a brewery more than I mention the actual flavor because I like to mix it up. If I'm going to pick a style, I like an IPA. Now, that's hard because Cigar City got bought last year to get more distribution. So I would say if I move away from that, probably Coppertail Brewing is now my favorite local craft brewery, and their Free Dive IPA is fantastic.
Okay, so you're like me. You're not one of the people who's on the latest edge of the trend, because nowadays it's all about sours and everything else. I still love pale ales, IPAs, and some of those others. So I love it. Phil, I don't think we talked about this, but I was about a couple of months away from launching my own craft beer company at some point, and then life got in the way, but I was on the verge of it. I love it. And so it's good to talk to someone else who enjoys it as much.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool, Bobby.
And one other thing that I wanted to get you to tell me about, in preparing for the interview, you mentioned that, at one point you had a job that involved a very interesting and odd way of delivering email. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, wow, that's a flashback, man. So this will definitely age me. So back in the 90s, when email was starting out, when the internet was still just mostly an idea and almost no pictures and definitely no video, I delivered email by hand for the Navy and the National Security Agency.
Yeah, delivering email by hand, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, here's the thing. Back in the 90s, computers were really expensive. And although we still called them PCs, personal computers, they weren't very personal. They were one building per military unit. So in my space, and where I worked, I had the computer. So it was my job. An email would come to my unit name, and it was my job to read the message and determine who in my unit actually was best suited to get that message. And if it was multiple people, then I had to make copies of that message until we got smarter and used 6-ply paper, carbon paper, believe it or not, in the 90s on that high impact dot matrix printer to send the messages where they needed to go. So yes, Bobby, I was indeed a human distribution list.
Well, see, I love that story. And, I will age myself here a bit too, to tell people I didn't have my first email address till I went to college. And even then, I didn't even really use email in college. The first time I really used email was when I was in law school. I didn't even have my first computer that was mine until my sophomore year in college. So, I think you and I have lived a bit of a different life than the millennials these days who, many of whom really don't remember the world without cell phones. So it's good to be talking to someone who can relate.
Absolutely. And email wasn't always free. That's the other thing that people don't realize. Email wasn't always free, which is why we didn't have it.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's enough of reminiscing about the good old days. So why don't we now kind of shift and actually start talking about why I brought you on here, and that's social selling and LinkedIn. And I want to start by talking about the concept of social selling. And let me just ask you, what in the world is social selling in the first place?
Sure. So social selling really is kind of a misnomer, but it is really kind of selling with social, not selling on social. So what do I mean by that? I mean, your job as a salesperson, as a thought leader, as someone who eventually wants to do business with people digitally, it is your job to stay in front of them and to connect with them and have conversations with them and understand their needs and to see who they are as people. And that is the kind of the research piece of sales, the prospecting piece of sales that many people miss out on. Many people go right for you fit my perfect customer avatar, my perfect customer persona. Yak, you want my stuff. And we know that's not true. There are so many choices out there. Social selling allows us to differentiate ourselves from our peers, from our competitors, from other people who have competing products, and allows us to build relationships that can turn into a sale. So think of it as selling with social, not selling on social.
Wait, so that's a good kind of overview of what it is. Now walk me through kind of the process. How do you go about doing that at a high level?
Sure. Well, first, it does start with understanding who you're trying to do business with. Who ultimately would you like to work with? Are you talking to VPs of HR? Are you talking to small business owners? Are you talking to VPs of sales? Are you talking to the C-suite? Are you talking to attorneys? Are you talking to insurance professionals? Who are you talking to? That's the first thing you have to start with. And then it's about building out your profile so you look attractive to those people. Now, I call this getting dressed before you get busy, because nobody pays you to put on a suit and tie. Nobody pays you to wear the corporate polo shirt. But heck, if you look out of place, people judge that. So get dressed before you get busy. Really important. So it starts there. From there, then it's finding those right people to connect with. Now, at first, you may not connect to any people who are potential customers. So connect to other thought leaders, other people like you. Most of the time, if you share somebody's message on LinkedIn and you do it in a valuable way, most people will then accept your LinkedIn connection. If you have a conversation with them, if you see somewhere that they posted and you converse with them, chances are they will allow you into their network, much like at a networking party, at a cocktail party, networking event. If you have a conversation with someone and they give you your business card, their business card, you can now send them another email. You have permission now. Now, this does not mean connect, add them to your marketing list, and then run away and hide and hope that marketing runs your message. And by marketing, even if you're a small business owner, one, your marketing team is you, but you're sending it via automated messaging. So you first identify, then you connect with, and then you educate and sharing content, right? And creating good content.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because early on when I had my law firm, I went out and I was doing a bunch of networking, and for a lot of reasons, I was doing it absolutely wrong. I was networking with other lawyers, not with potential customers. But that's a subject for another day. But it was hilarious. Even among lawyers, I would meet these people and we would exchange business cards, some of it at lunch, some of it one-on-one. And all these people just automatically add me just to their email list. And that's it. That's all I ever get from them is their newsletter. half of it, they know completely, they know full well that it has nothing to do with what I do. I think they were just trying to stay front of mind. But to me, if I meet you once and I just get your emails and that's it, I'm not going to think to send work your way. So I guess what you're saying is you need to do something beyond that to start building the connection and build a conversation on social. Is that kind of the way to do it?
Absolutely. Your goal is to build more of a relationship so that you're seen as a friendly instead of a hostile. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you think about your cell phone, nowadays, if you're in somebody's cell phone, it's for one of two reasons. The good reason you're in someone's cell phone as your phone number is because they look forward to talking to you and maybe they'll call you again. So you show up on caller ID. The bad reason is because they put you in their phone as this person is a jerk. Do not accept their calls. Send them to voicemail. And they want to identify that it's you because that way they know that they can ignore that call. So that is the bane of social selling, is that you get known as someone who is only going to sell and who is not going to be social. So be social. And that is so, so important and so often overlooked.
So I would assume that the be social, that's the component of where you have to add value by, for example, like you said, sharing someone's posts, commenting, providing feedback. If someone asks questions, you answer that kind of piece before you start trying to sell or even get them on the phone to start selling to them.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, you need to add value before you ever add volume to the conversation. That means sharing their stuff, commenting on their posts, adding insight to the conversation, finding other people that are in common with you, and then eventually being interesting. It's really important that you think about that because, again, Bobby, if you and I know somebody and we know somebody well and we're in common and I see that you're having a conversation with that person, and immediately I can now walk into that conversation, whether online or offline, and add value to that conversation, even by just agreeing and smiling and nodding. But if it's two strangers and we walk up, often we're seen as an interruption. So you need to then kind of start your own conversation. If people are posting, you see some commenting, add value to that in different ways. Ask questions. Be genuinely interested in that other person because your goal is to earn the right to a private conversation, not to earn the right to just blast them with crap that they don't need.
So I guess it all comes back to just common sense and the reciprocity idea of give and give and give, and don't ask for anything back until you've built up a bunch of goodwill from the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want that person to be excited to talk to me. I don't want them to feel obligated. And that means that it isn't just, hey, look at that. Bobby shared my post. So now I can sell Bobby something because, reciprocity works.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how reciprocity works. You have to build that up, right? You have to build up that relationship bank account. So eventually you've earned the right to ask for a deeper conversation, not just reciprocity.
Well, so let me ask you this question, because I had this happen a while back not on LinkedIn, on Twitter. It was back in the days when everybody was sending auto DMs on Twitter. So I rarely actually looked at it, but I guess I was looking through it and I noticed someone, I guess I had followed him or he'd followed me, I don't know which, and he'd reached out to try to just start a conversation. It was saying, hey, I help people, blah, 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 and, thought I might be able to chat. And, I agreed to the call, but looking back, there was no, kind of goodwill built up in advance. So I obviously wasn't jumping to actually buy from this person. So you would have suggested that he needed to try to, kind of build some goodwill so that by the time we're talking on the phone, I know, hey, this is the guy who shared my stuff all the time. He's been insightful and all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. In fact, I would encourage, instead of saying what you do, talk about the way that you serve. So that's really important. You have to flip that conversation. That first one, the reason probably that you took the call is because out of 1,000 DMs, only one of them didn't go directly for the sale. So you probably said, well, okay, this is better than nothing, and maybe even a little bit surprised. And now people expect to be sold right away, which is why, kind of sliding into the direct message is often, not even viewed. People don't even see that. Not to mention, if you add value, right, people do get excited. They do want to talk to you because they're hoping that you have some more insight that you didn't share. It takes us a long time to build a relationship. And yeah, sometimes there is a direct correlation between I contacted Bobby today and tomorrow we do business. But that is so seldom. People are doing more and more research, and you have less and less power over hiding information. And by hiding, I mean having information that even though it's out in plain sight, the client couldn't find. I mean, Google really made the playing field really level, because now I can search for just about anything. And I only need that salesperson towards the end to help me make an insightful decision. We need more insight and less information now. So that's where you're going to stand out, because if you're offering that insight to others, I'm going to pay attention and see that. And then I'm going to be more likely to believe that when we get on the phone, that you'll actually add some insight to me.
Yeah, it's funny that you put it that way, because I actually last night late, I saw a message in a Facebook group that I'm in where this person was asking a question about how much to give away for free. This is in the online marketing space of trying to figure out how much I give away for free, and then what do I include in my paid resource, of course. And this morning I got up and I saw it, and it's a group I'm pretty active in. So I responded and I said, I think if you have a question, give. I don't know if you agree, but I think most people are looking for the insight. It's not just the blanket information. Most of what, at least I deal with, people could get the information elsewhere. They're not coming to me for the information when they want to hire me. They're coming for me for my judgment, my insight, and for making their lives easier. Is that kind of been your experience as well?
Yes, I am nodding my head furiously, Bobby. Absolutely. That is so true, right? When in doubt, give. And here's the thing. If it's general information, absolutely give. When it's unique insight to another person's business, that's when money can exchange. For instance, there are millions of ways likely to get your podcast transcribed. For me to charge you to tell you what you could go to Google and find in 10 seconds if you did is idiotic. Now, that being said, if I change that and I give you 5 steps to creating an article, a video, and a podcast with less effort than before to build your thought leadership business, now that's specific, now it's relevant, and now likely you'll pay for that.
Yeah. So, I think we're saying the same thing. It's interesting. You give a bunch away, build value, and then that's when you can transition. Let me ask you, can you use this process on any social media platform?
You probably can. You can do the whole reciprocity works. I would say though, LinkedIn works the best because you get at more of their information. So you can be even more specific and relevant in your target, especially if you pay for Sales Navigator. You have like 50 or 60 different kind of data points that you can mine so that you can really customize that conversation with them to make it even more relevant. Because in a world of information, relevant information wins. So yes, you could use it on any platform, but it's often more difficult to find the right people because like Twitter does not have job title. Now, that being said, there are tools out there like eCarn that are fantastic that allow you to kind of, to look at a job title because it cross-references with LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is probably the best one for you.
Yeah. So other than job title, and I wanted to pivot to LinkedIn. Sell me on the benefits for someone like me of using LinkedIn and being active on it.
Sure. Well, first, it comes up really quickly in a Google or Bing search. So if you're doing a search for someone's name, often their LinkedIn profile is top 5, and you can go check it out and see more information about that. So if you meet someone at a cocktail party, a networking event, or whatever, you can quickly find people there, which means hopefully they can find you. Now that's important. Now, the more active you are on any of these platforms, the more you're going to show up in search, the more you're going to show up in when people look for other people. So if you're doing the work and you're being active, people will find you. Now, that's the inbound way. And I'm going to tell you, most people don't do a lot of searching for individuals. They might search for information, and then they might follow that back to look at your profile. But the biggest and best way that you can use it is by being more aggressive outbound. So that means you can use LinkedIn as a search engine, really through the yellow pages and then down to the white pages, meaning both category or industry, as well as then the humans behind that category or industry. the best way of any platform out there. So that search really helps. If people do post on LinkedIn and you pay for Sales Navigator, you can see everything they post. You can aggregate their whole company, so you can do some account-based selling if you want to into that. So if there's a company of even 10 people, you can follow each of them and put that in a nice tag group so you can see just information from that company that gets posted, making that super relevant, or you can add in others from outside the industry, which then allows you to customize your relevant conversation with them.
Well, so I was going to say, so you would use all that information and put it all together, and then that would help kind of you tailor how you talk with them on LinkedIn, but then also as you move to offline selling, it would help you kind of tailor your message to them?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the big thing, right? It helps you build a dossier worth of information we're talking about with the people that you want to eventually do business with. And you should know that if they're posting on LinkedIn, they expect that people will actually see that, which is where, if you can, you should also then do some reconnaissance on the other platforms, see if they have a Twitter account, see if they link up their church or their synagogue or, their favorite nonprofit or whatever they link up to their profile. So you can then gather that dossier of information, making your conversations that much more rich and that much more relevant, because again, in the land of information, insight wins and relevant information wins most.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was reading Dory Clark, not her most recent book, but Stand Out. And she mentioned something, and I think it was from Robert Cialdini, saying that mentioning something that you have in common with someone is one of the quickest ways to get them to like you, which of course is then a quick way to get them to want to talk with you and engage with you. So that's great advice. I think that you can use these LinkedIn information and then other things to find information, to maybe find something in common that you could talk about. So for example, you and I could talk about craft beer as an example that would, kind of naturally lead us to kind of have a rapport that you might not have if I tried to talk with you without having that piece of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me give you just a super quick story here, Bobby, about that. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a Miami Dolphins game with a friend of mine who sang the national anthem. He's from Fargo, North Dakota. I've never been to Fargo, Bobby, and I don't know that I necessarily want to go to Fargo.
Especially not in January, I think.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's why I moved from Wisconsin. So in Fargo, though, Mark, my friend, actually knows one of my friends, the only other person that I know in Fargo. Well, he brought his parents to the Miami Dolphins game, and his father asked me about Wisconsin. I said, yeah, I'm from Wisconsin. He said, where? I said, northern Wisconsin. He said, no, what town? I said, Crivets. Crivets has 996 people. We have one stoplight. We have one flower shop, and we have one grocery store. Okay. From Fargo, Mark's dad, Gordon, actually went to middle school and high school with the florist's wife.
Wow.
In a town of 996. Had I not narrowed that down to Crivets and just said Wisconsin, we'd have never had anything in common. Now that he sees Crivets, which is actually on my profile, had he noticed that online, that would have been an immediate connection and immediately would have broken out any barriers that either one of us had about doing business with each other, because he knew someone from Crivets and valued that person. Now, of course, that can work against you, but most of the time that works in your favor.
Okay, so I think this is great advice. And you mentioned Sales Navigator. That's a native tool, or is that a tool that's outside of LinkedIn?
The answer to that is kind of both. And by that, I mean LinkedIn offers that, but it creates a whole different experience on LinkedIn. It used to be that I would tell people, until you've exhausted all the free stuff on LinkedIn, don't pay for Navigator. Well, now Navigator helps you do all the free stuff faster. And so it's about $80 a month, but it allows you to prospect and gather information and have more relevant conversations faster than the free version does. Because instead of just 10 or 12 facets of a search that you can gather on the free version, now you've got 40 or 50 different facets that you can gather. Plus, you can even see if they're active on LinkedIn, which is so important because Bobby, you said you weren't active there. If I had tried to send you a message about having a conversation and you hadn't logged in for 3 years, that would be very ineffective. And I would see that by using Sales Navigator. I would see you haven't used it in the last 90 days, and I would find another tool to reach out to you.
That's interesting. I use a similar thing on Twitter to find who's been active and who's been inactive. But are there free tools that you recommend if people aren't ready to you pay $80 a month for the Sales Navigator?
Well, there are some free tools out there. The challenge with the free tools is LinkedIn continues to kind of bash those tools and shut them down or run them into hiding. There are some tools, though, that do make it more rich. Duck Soup is one. LinMail Pro is another one. Those are good ones. Now, I would say, though, remember that you don't have to scale once you figure out your audience as fast as you would if you're trying to build a tribe of 1 million people. So if you're selling one-to-one big ticket items, you don't need 1,000 people in your pipeline. In fact, if you had 1,000 people, you wouldn't probably be able to contact them all for the whole year. So your goal should really be instead to have a hyper-relevant, hyper-focused list of people that you can talk to and then have those conversations. Hopefully some convert to scale and then do it again.
Okay. So let me back away from the sales piece because I think we've talked about that and I think that's an interesting concept. But I think LinkedIn has value beyond that, right? I mean, you can do a lot of other things on LinkedIn, like building your thought leadership. And so I guess here's my perspective. I think I'm probably a pretty typical entrepreneur when it comes to LinkedIn. You know, I've got a profile. I update my profile from time to time. When I put up a blog post, I'll tend to post it there. The podcast, I'll tend to, post when each episode goes live. But I don't do a lot else. So with that background, walk me through how I should kind of up my game. And I think that'll be a good lesson for other people who are listening to how they can up their game on LinkedIn.
Sure. So if you made your profile fantastic, then the next step is to actually share some content. Now, right now, LinkedIn has a couple ways to do this. First is just as your status, and this actually gets a lot of traction. Posting your status with no formatting, just as straight up text. So before you'd write an article, put it on your blog, and maybe link from LinkedIn to it. But now LinkedIn is penalizing people in the same way that Facebook does for driving people off of the platform. Okay. So instead, just post it as a status update. It used to be the articles on LinkedIn Publisher were really valuable. As you mentioned when we were in the green room, Bobby, they're hard as heck to even find where those articles are. So I would tell you, don't even focus on those. Certainly have a couple of them and add good pictures to them and maybe update, one every few months. But it's not as relevant because most people are not looking for longer form articles. They're looking for quick things that can help their business. Now, along those quick things that can help your business is LinkedIn Video. LinkedIn Video still is free as of we're recording this now, and not everybody has it. There's probably maybe 10% of people that don't. I have talked to some people who don't. It is available both on your mobile device, so on your smartphone, as well as on the desktop, where you can upload native video, thus keeping people on the LinkedIn platform. So a quick 30 to 90 second video that isn't highly edited, isn't highly scripted, but is engaging, interesting, and has both good lighting and good sound, still great ways to build yourself up as a thought leader. Now, the other way I would say is get off of your own feed and go talk to other people. Go to their stuff and comment on their stuff. Engage with them where they live, because chances are they're not looking specifically for you. If you show up in their feed, they'll probably engage if they think it's interesting, but they're not going hard after looking for you. So you need to find them and bring the conversation to them.
Okay, so let me walk through, because you kind of talked about a few different things there on your status. So for example, I posted last week on my blog a 2,500 word blog post. I assume that would be too much to put in a status update.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, too much. You probably get about 300 to 500 words. Yeah.
Okay. So if you can come up with something where you can give some real value in 300 to 500 words, put that in your status update is one piece of advice you give. Video. Is that kind of like a Facebook Live? Is it a live video, or is it you record a video and then you upload it?
The answer to that is yes, you could do it right there on LinkedIn. LinkedIn actually lets you do it, but I would tell you to record the video. Absolutely. That way you get a couple shots at it and you don't have to worry about putting it up right away. Now, even if you use LinkedIn, you still don't have to do it, right away. But if you use one of the other tools, and actually one of my favorite tools to do that with is OneMob, ONEMOB. Now, I'm an advisor to the company, full disclosure there, but I think they're fantastic. They do some really great stuff with making video a little bit more branded. So they'll add your logo to that, and then you save it to your camera roll on your phone, and then you upload it from there. But you could do high production value. In fact, I see that some people are taking their old YouTube videos and putting them up, but you have to be brief. You cannot post a 20 or 30-minute video. In fact, LinkedIn, I've seen as long as a 10-minute video. Most people, if they're at work and they're wanting to do business, they're not spending 10 minutes watching a video. So you need to kind of get in and out and not tell as many stories. So 2 to 5 minutes is usually best. And if you can make the point in under 60 seconds, then you can repurpose it also on Instagram or somewhere else so that you have a dual purpose video, making you even more, hopefully, widely seen.
So in my case, for example, maybe I could do something like a legal tip of the day for entrepreneurs or something like that, that I could be quick, easy, and just get some information. So that would be a good use for, in your view, for something that I could do.
Absolutely. Or if you're at an event, right, record a video with somebody else. I was in Dallas last week speaking. So I did a quick conversation where I actually use someone else's network and their insight to then get in front of his people by posting a video of he and I, making sure to tag him in that status update. So now all of his audience sees it as well as all of mine.
That's a good way to do it. And that's my other piece on LinkedIn that I never quite understand is getting people to follow or find you. I guess you do it in that way by you're doing the prospecting, and hopefully then they come back and have some interest.
Absolutely correct. Yep. That's the whole goal.
Okay. So now another thing, and you mentioned going to other people's, kind of pages and content and commenting there, which I think is great advice. I want to ask a related question. Again, the last time I was really trying to use LinkedIn, all the advice was get into LinkedIn groups. Are LinkedIn groups still a thing, and are they valuable?
Funny that you asked that, because I actually had a conversation with someone about this today. We talked about LinkedIn groups actually are trying to make a comeback. LinkedIn groups in 2016 and 17 were completely dead. I told people to not waste your time. It wasn't worth it. LinkedIn kind of made them go fallow. When LinkedIn got bought by Microsoft, they really stopped updating the groups and really made them virtually useless. And they opened them up to make them unmoderated. But I think this year and next year, we're going to see a comeback of groups because they're going to add video to the groups. They're going to add hopefully some more moderation tools to the groups to make those groups much more rich, much like Facebook groups are. And I hope, and they better do this, because if they don't, it isn't going to work. And that is, they need to build another app that allows for notifications that show up in the regular LinkedIn app. It can't just be standalone, but they need the standalone to manage them and to focus on just the group, but they need to notify people that, hey, Bobby, there's a new update in the group that you're in that you said that you want to know about. Right now, there's no even opt-in for that notification, making them almost invisible.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason I asked that is I know on Facebook groups have been one of, for me at least, one of the best ways to really start to connect with people, but also actually it's been wonderful for me to do market research, right? Because I'm able to actually get into groups of online entrepreneurs and really hear what they're saying. What are their concerns? What is the language they're using? So I was wondering if there was going to be a LinkedIn renaissance, and I hope that you're right and that it does come back around.
Well, I think I am right. And I say that because LinkedIn got bought by Microsoft for $26 billion. And people used to think of Microsoft as an old, stodgy company. They got a new CEO. It not like he's super new anymore, but he seems to be super progressive and understands the collaborative nature of people. So I really think he's done great things in helping the LinkedIn group be autonomous, yet leveraging the power of Microsoft. And I'm really excited. I mean, I took a trip out to LinkedIn in San Francisco last year and spent a whole day talking to product experts, community managers, and people at LinkedIn. And they are committed to making this an amazing platform. And I think that in the next 12 to 24 months, it will be an amazing platform.
Well, it's good to hear. And one thing that I noticed recently when I went onto LinkedIn, quite honestly, to prepare to talk with you today was what seemed like a new feature, although I guess it's been there about a year, and that's LinkedIn Learning. What is LinkedIn Learning?
So LinkedIn's learning platform is what used to be lynda.com, lynda.com. It is an opportunity to get skilled in a topic presented by someone who is skilled in the topic, who is typically a thought leader, but not just a thought leader, often also a practitioner. So it is a fantastic way to quickly get up to speed on a topic. They're not often super long. They're segmented nicely so you can learn about them and to understand them. And LinkedIn Learning then will validate then the skill that is on your profile. So for people who, let's say, they're skilled at team building, for instance, and 99 plus people have clicked that little plus button on their profile that says that they're skilled at team building, how do you measure that? Well, you can't. So you have to have a course that you'll then take a kind of a quiz on and then validate that, yes, indeed, Bobby Klink is skilled in team building. And now when Bobby says something about team building, then yes, then it helps him be seen as that thought leader. Or in your case, right, it's about intellectual property. Really important, because just because someone has a degree in something doesn't necessarily mean that they're an expert in it. And with a lot of skills now, they're self-taught. So if you don't have a degree, how else do you validate it? The answer, I believe, is LinkedIn Learning.
Yeah, and to take a deeper dive, I mean, I looked at it quickly for the listeners. Basically, it's a bunch of different online courses, and it looks like they have one that's, for example, it's not just courses. I think they have some that are basically, here's a path if you want to learn this skill, and one of them was like digital marketing. So if you're trying to get better at digital marketing, they have a whole path. I think it was 23 or 24 different courses that they're suggesting to you. And if you are a LinkedIn premium member, it's free. If you're not, I think you have to pay, is it $30 a month, Phil? Do you know?
Yes, I think it's 29 or $30. Yep, I think that's right. And they changed that. So check back on the LinkedIn Learning if that's something, because they changed and they offer specials where you can get a free month for free during November. Veterans get a free month and sometimes even a free year. So take a look at it.
Yeah, but I guess my point is simply to say, nowadays for just about any online course you're going to take, you're going to pay hundreds of dollars. A lot of people are charging $1,000 for online courses that provide information. For $30 a month, that's a heck of a deal when you could get a bunch of different information. So I'm glad, Phil, I'm glad that I'm interviewing you, if nothing else, because I learned about LinkedIn Learning and I'm going to go start taking some of those courses. But let me ask you the other piece. Is it worth trying to become an instructor on LinkedIn Learning for someone who's trying to build up their platform as a thought leader?
Absolutely it is. You should definitely try to reach out to LinkedIn, especially if you see that there's a gap in their offering. So you need to go through it and see, like, what are they missing? Are they missing thoughts on, how to trademark an idea, how to trademark a stick on a string, a physical product, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So look for the gaps. And then what's great is then LinkedIn helps you by, really solidifying that you are indeed a thought leader, that you are indeed someone that's there in that space, so that you can then hopefully get some more business and drive some traffic back. And I would imagine they'll start possibly viewing you if you get a course that's accepted and you record it and it gets seen enough. I would imagine then that they might even put you on their expert platform, which would then expose you to the whole LinkedIn universe of people who might be interested in that, and validate that then on your profile that says that you're a LinkedIn Learning instructor. So when you're prospecting and having sales conversations with people, then you'll show as that expert that you are.
Wow. I think that's great advice. Like I said, looked into it and I'm thinking about it. So it's definitely interesting how LinkedIn is changing. And I think would you think that LinkedIn is going to change significantly over the next 12 to 18 months?
I don't know that we're going to see significant changes on what it looks like. I think we may see some significant changes in functionality. So last year, LinkedIn did a complete visual overhaul. I think they're going to take all the data points that we have and help us slice and dice that and use that for even more automated intelligence ways, more ways of making it more relevant to us. They've already introduced some AI. I expect there'll be even more. That automated intelligence, one of the big things that they're playing with right now that rolled out about the end of December or middle of December, is this what they're calling like a topic magnet, where you can draw people to your profile, to your status post based on the words that are in that post, can draw people who are experts in that topic and show that in their stream, even if you're only a second level connection. So if we're not connected, but you are an expert in intellectual property, and I need an expert in intellectual property to answer that, you could get a notification, or at least it would show up at the top of your feed in the LinkedIn homepage that says, Phil Gerbishak asked a question that requires your expertise. Come and answer it, which now is a great way, if you are in fact a thought leader, that you can engage other thought leaders, or if you ask people who are not self-employed, I would imagine eventually they'll help you narrow that down to say people that are not only experts in intellectual property, but also who are lawyers, also who are skilled in intellectual property, not just they say they have a skill, but really are verified. I think that's going to come, and I think they're going to continue to build out the premium tools. I mean, that's really where the money is and where the power is, because premium is what helps power the LinkedIn ecosystem. Premium helps people get better jobs, find people to talk to at sales, and hire better people. And that's really where the money is for LinkedIn, not in you just having a profile and having a conversation.
Right. That's interesting, and I hope it's right. I did want to ask you, though, look, I'm someone, I like to read books. I like to try to really analyze things a lot. That's probably the lawyer in me. Are there any good books out there, either about LinkedIn or social selling, that you can recommend?
Well, about LinkedIn, because they change so often, I haven't seen a lot of great LinkedIn books. I'm working on one myself. So I expect that I'll have one that I think will be pretty darn good sometime later this year about the LinkedIn sales blueprint, how to sell yourself with that. And I'll have that. I'll make sure you get a link for that, Bobby, when it comes, so we can update this. But otherwise, because LinkedIn has changed so much, I don't see a lot of great books, but I do see a lot of people that you can learn from. So I would say along that lines, along that kind of social selling, here's some people to follow. I'd follow Jack Kozakowski from Creation Agency. He's very smart. I would follow the folks at Vengreso. That's VENGRESO.com. I'm an advisor for them. Vivica Von Rosen and Bryn Tillman are fantastic people to follow. They're in the Vengreso. They're on the Vengreso team. So follow them. I would tell you that you need to find a salesperson that you like, because they're often sharing and testing and doing things like that. I actually really like Larry Levine, Levine. Larry is a practitioner. He's a copier salesman and is really, really smart. I'd also follow Jill Conrath. I'd follow Diana Guerin, Geairn, Diana Guerin. She is very, very skilled at that. And then I would say also Anthony Iannarino and Mark Hunter are really wicked smart too. Anthony's book on the art of closing is a fantastic book. It's not about social selling, but it is about getting commitment, which is part of that social selling piece. And then Mark Hunter is all about prospecting. He's known as the sales hunter, and he has some phenomenal ways of prospecting and really kind of shifting your mind around on that and doing more prospecting in less time so you can get high profits.
Well, that's a lot of great advice, and that's a lot of people who I now have to go follow and learn from. So I thank you for that. Before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests, because I'm a very much an action-oriented guy, and I like to think in small pieces of what's the next step to take. So with that in mind, what is something that the listeners and someone like me could do, say in 5 minutes a day, or maybe something they could get done by the end of the week to really start improving their business through social selling, through LinkedIn, et cetera?
So in just a couple of minutes, the first thing that I would tell you to do is pay attention to every single notification that pops up. Whether it's somebody's birthday, somebody's anniversary, somebody commented back on a post that you commented on, or whatever, and pay attention to those. If they're your ideal customer, you should try to engage back. You should look, if they look at your profile, you should look back and try to start a conversation. I would tell you in 5 minutes, get off of your profile and go find some people that you want to have conversations with and try to add value to them. Try to comment on their posts. If their posts are relevant to your audience, share their posts. Make sure you tag them in the post and do your best to get in front of them, and don't wait for people to come to you. And the last thing that I would tell you, if you just had 5 minutes, is to create a quick video. Create a little 30-second video with one insight that you have. Make sure you say your name in the video, because sometimes, as much as I'd like to believe that people actually look at who posted the video, they don't. So say your name and offer the tip, and then invite the questions and respond to each and every question or each and every comment that comes through, because those people that did that are valuable, and they're people that you could eventually do business with if you have your ideal customer persona or avatar defined.
I think that's all great advice. And so I think listeners, you would be well served to do those three things. And I think that's good advice on LinkedIn. It's quite honestly good advice on other social networks. Twitter, maybe not as much, but Facebook as well, in groups and things like that. So I think that's a good advice to apply. Phil, I want to thank you for coming on and giving some great advice. Where can listeners get in touch with you, find more information about you? If they want to buy something from you, where can they go to find you?
Well, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't send you to LinkedIn. Just go find me there, right? It's really easy. It's Gerbyshak is Gerbyshak, Phil Gerbyshak. Just find me there. My phone number is on my profile. That's 414-640-7445. You can text me. You can call me, whatever is best for you. And then my new program, my new website will be up at thesaleschronicles.com. So you'll be able to check that out. That's thesaleschronicles.com. And I'll make sure that I have links to everything there. And if you just want value, you can check out the blog, check out interviews, watch some videos, or sign up for a free newsletter on how you can make your profile better, how you can get dressed before you get busy so you can start using LinkedIn to actually grow your business.
Thanks for that, Phil. And listeners, I would encourage you to take Phil up on those ways to get in touch with him. I think you'll get some great value there, and you will be better and you will improve your LinkedIn persona. And I think it'll help you in the long run. That's it for now. So listeners, stay tuned for my quick legal lesson after the break.
And now for today's legal lesson.
Yeah. Wow, that was a great, insightful interview with Phil. He gave some really great advice on how you can use LinkedIn and social selling and social media generally to really build some good relationships that hopefully will have some long-term positive benefits for you. In thinking through what kind of legal lesson I wanted to give after Phil's interview, I thought about a lot of different things, but I thought the most useful lesson I could give would be to address some do's and don'ts, some issues that I hear come up over and over again, and common questions I hear from people about what can they and can't they do on social media from a standpoint of really it's copyright law. They don't necessarily know that that's what they're asking about, but that's what they're asking about. So without further ado, I'm going to launch into that. Now, the big part of this is to understand that social media doesn't change the rules about copyright or any other kind of intellectual property. So what does that mean? Well, it means that someone posting something on social media doesn't mean that they lose protection of it. So the common example of this is a lot of people thought that, hey, if you post a picture on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Facebook, any of these, that you were giving up your rights and that they could then grab that image and use that on their own. That's not the case. Posting something on social media doesn't mean you lose any kind of protection in the underlying picture, image, written work, etc. Now, that might confuse you because you say, well, wait a minute, can't I share it? And the answer to that is yes. And the reason why you can share or retweet, repin, whatever it is on whatever the relevant social network is because the terms of service of that social network set out that that's allowed. And what happens, and I was looking at the terms of service on LinkedIn as an example. And what it says is basically that by posting something on LinkedIn, you are giving a non-exclusive, worldwide, transferable, sublicensable, etc., right to LinkedIn and anyone using LinkedIn to use, copy, modify, distribute, publish, and process, etc., so long as they do so within the context and the contours of what's allowed on the social network. So this is a very simple case that you are, when you post something, giving permission in written form because you've agreed to the terms of service for people to be able to use it so long as they do so within the bounds of that social network. Common example of this is YouTube, for example. You post something on YouTube. Well, someone is allowed to, under the terms of YouTube, they can put an embeddable player on their website. And so you, by posting something on YouTube, are giving them permission to do that. So that is what you need to understand. That's why it's allowed. But what's not allowed is whether it's YouTube, I go and I download the video and then post it on my own, or if it's one of the other sites, I download a picture and do the right click save as. That's what you can't do. The importance of this, and really what I want to get to in having this discussion, is you need to be familiar with what's allowed and what's not allowed on every social network you're using. Because as long as you are using the social network consistent with the rules, you don't get in trouble. If, however, you use a social network in a way that you're not allowed to do, then you potentially are opening yourself up to a claim that you have exceeded the rights you have to use someone else's social or someone else's copyrighted material. So again, the common example of this is don't grab something off one network and save it to your hard drive or save it to the cloud and then use it somewhere else. Just don't do that. That's never allowed. But there are other things you need to think about. For example, and this isn't strictly a copyright issue, this is a right to publicity. You have to be careful about tagging a popular person if what you're saying has nothing to do with them. You can't do that because you're trying to use their popularity, their platform to sell your product. And that's not allowed. So again, I know this isn't going to be popular for you to hear, but you really should review the terms of service for every one of the social networks if you're doing anything that's beyond the very obviously allowable. Again, you don't necessarily need to do that if you're just on Facebook and liking and sharing and doing things like that. But if you are doing anything beyond that, if you're going to think about leveraging one platform on another, et cetera, you just need to be careful and use some common sense before you do so. So the upshot of today's lesson is you can use social networks in very powerful ways. And so long as you follow the rules, you're not going to get in legal trouble. If you exceed the rules, you might get in trouble with the social network, but you also might be accused of some kind of intellectual property infringement, which is not going to be good for you. So make sure you follow the rules. Make sure you don't just grab something off one of these sites and think you can use it. You still have to think about the rights of the person who originally created it. So that's it. I'm going to keep it short today because, again, I think Phil's advice was so good and it just needs, you need to think through that and use his advice, but just be careful and you do it. That's it for today. Next week, I have a really great episode about podcasting issues. So if you're interested in podcast issues, I hope you'll stick around and listen in on next week's episode. But that's it for today. I'm Bobby Klink signing off.
Thanks for listening. And remember to visit mistakes.youronlinegenius.com to get your essential guide to the 4 legal mistakes that can doom your business and how to avoid them. Join us next week for another episode to expand your online genius and your success.